All right, guys, welcome back to Watch Trading Academy. And joining me today is Christian for his 250K club interview. Now, wasn't like 3 months ago you were here? I mean, I'm tired of seeing you guys. I'm like, we just talked to this guy. Why you gotta get rich so fast?
It's your fault.
Well, first off, I don't know if I want that responsibility. I'm tired of being responsible for people getting rich. It'd be nice for once in a while if people slowed down, gave me time to have some vacation time. 100 to 250K club, what, like 3 months, 4 months? How long was it?
Yeah, was it October we were here?
October,
like
so 4 months, like roughly. I mean, that's a pretty big jump.
Yeah.
I assume the end of the year was good to you. Like you did good, right? That's how you usually progress with the compounding effects of that.
Yeah.
How much did you make in December?
December it was over 40, but it wasn't as good as November.
What was November?
It was higher than, low to mid 40s.
Okay, so in 2 months you basically like made 80 grand. Like you went from 100K club to
Minus some
almost
shipping,
100K in 2 months. Okay, so first off, how does it feel?
It was honestly the end of the year was a surprise. I was surprised. I pushed a bit of capital in, got confident, and it was still a surprise that it happened.
Okay,
So,
but
it
the
feels
confidence
good. Feels
helps,
good.
right? Like when you
100%.
buy with confidence without this like fear constantly of like, am I buying right or not?
You know you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, that feels good.
So let's talk a little bit about what is the biggest difference between operating at a 250K level versus 100K level? Is it just more inventory for you, or what was that progression? Or was it luck? This happens too. You know, sometimes like more clients call and randomly you go, it's the
Sometimes
holiday.
it feels like certain weeks,
Yeah, of
sure, it
course.
feels like luck, but I don't think it's luck. I think sure there is an element of luck, but I think it's more, inventory helps. Obviously, there's no question.
How much did you increase your inventory over the last quarter of last year?
I doubled my inventory from August or September till
So how much total inventory you have now?
450.
Okay, so you were at 200 and change, and now you're at,
225,
okay,
so I think I about doubled
almost
it.
500.
And that was a
Okay.
conscious decision to okay, I am doing this. It wasn't just.
Okay, did you inject money personally, or did you borrow money to do that?
I borrowed some of the additional.
Excess capital.
Yeah, almost 2.
Okay, so you basically borrowed half of it and
Yep.
just doubled that because you were confident in the scale of
Yeah,
what
I'm a
was
little
possible.
less than my leverage ratio would be just under half. Yeah.
One thing I really like about your personal strategy, which I wanted to make these interviews, especially 250 and up. We just had Vitor with a 500K interview. It's like that guy's.
He hit 500?
Yeah, he's about to hit 1 million. So he's going to be
Right
back
back.
next
I'll go
month.
chase him
He's
down.
going to be back next month. And on his, I decided to break down this whole thing about how to use crypto because so many people are talking about it. So I was like, what are some safety measures you take to do that? So maybe I decided all these 250K interviews should have something educational in them as to how people have been able to get there and like what are some of the steps real people can take, not just aspirational, but rather like I can do this tomorrow.
Yep.
One thing I've noticed you do, so I kind of pay attention to what people are doing that gets them to be more successful than this person, et cetera, is you become really good at creating a little gang for yourself in WTA. Like that's something that I think more people should do, but you've done it correctly. So one of the things that I want to kind of point out, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's more of an observation, is a lot of people come into WTA and then they learn the process, they make some money, and then they gang up outside of WTA. Does that make sense? Like they kind of find that you see it. Like you kind of see they have this little niche. They go, oh, in this little other group, I found these guys, and I'm doing this. Yeah, exactly. So they kind of carry on. But what you've done is kind of taken that approach of like, hey, we do need support. We need to support each other. But you remained within the ecosystem, and you're like, hey, like these guys are growing. And what's actually interesting, a couple of people in your gang, I call it a gang, but are also coming here today to do their 250K club interview, which is this right. So this is, I think, the really key part here, is that the growth is together instead of outside the ecosystem. Because over the last maybe 6 months or so, the industry has suffered huge losses. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I can't afford to pay my rent. I'm a jeweler. I don't have this. Yet our students are thriving. So I find that to be one of those places where I say, aha, I told you guys. So, like when you go outside the ecosystem, you're getting involved with a bunch of sharks. And when there's no food for the sharks, they start eating each other. Inside the ecosystem, you guys help each other. And I see that very much. And I see your participation in the main group even past your success. A lot of people, once they hit a threshold, they go, oh, I don't need to participate in this anymore. This was the basics.
Yeah. Right or wrong, I definitely do that. Yeah.
But I think this is a very important step because, again, people get, what they don't realize is by leaving the ecosystem, what they're saying is, I'm now complacent. I have a better method, but they haven't really applied. They got here through method one, but they're like, now, like, I'm going to implode this other thing. And they end up either stagnant or losing that momentum.
Yeah.
You've done the opposite. So maybe today's interview for your 250K club recognition, let's talk a little bit about how do you decipher who should be in your gang or not? Right? Like, what are some of the steps you take to determine, like, why are you friends with this person? Like, why are you jumping back and forth, talking to each other? How do you make the difference between this person just selling to you, right? Because obviously, this usually, I say, one of the ways we start these relationships is a transaction with someone. And then they end up, we kind of, we become friends, a little, and over time we kind of understand how they operate, and we agree that if numbers make sense, they make sense for both of us. But I'm just curious as to your process. How did you kind of find your gang? How did you decipher who should be and nope, thank you? Even though like you're a nice guy, like I just don't see what we have in common. That's why I'm just curious, because I think that's something you've done better than. It has been a big part of the story. I don't know that you've done it better or worse than someone else, but it's been a big part of the story of how you've gotten here. And from what I've noticed, it continues to work for you. So I'm just curious as to what are some of these things that people can use from that experience and say, hey, I'm going to make my own gang without kind of getting kicked out of WTA or going the other opposite way or et cetera. Yeah,
create their little community, sub-community or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's a tough question. I mean, it definitely happened organically. So there was no plan. I'm sure we could say that for all of us. So we have a core group of 4 that we communicate literally every day. Right? Every day.
I see it. That's why I'm
and I mean, we just chat with each other all day long or call each other or whatever. And like you said, it's not a coincidence that those guys are killing it too.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? I mean, we help each other every day. It's nice to have that support, whether it be to celebrate highs or to help with lows. But I think in terms of how it came about, first off, locale. I mean, we got a bunch of guys in Charlotte, right?
So location mattered. Like this was like in real life, not just like on the internet. So it was a real life. We were within reach of each other.
I mean, physical, I think, was the start of it, and that.
Everybody in the gang's physically there, correct?
Yeah, within half an hour.
Okay.
Other, right?
So we didn't like you can reach each other, or have a coffee or whatever. Like
exactly.
Okay.
I mean, shout out, right? Chris Cordis, Eric Boyke, Lucas Wilson, core.
Right.
Core
but these 4 are within your local. So locality, physicality matters.
To start. Now it doesn't mean. I mean, there's guys I connect with in WTA outside of that, and we're great. Right. But something to do with.
But your
physical.
Gang is really those 4. So has a transaction occurred with every one of these people?
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. We've done deals.
So, no, before you guys were a gang.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So point 2, transactional. Like we're participating, we like each other's vibe and how we're doing a transaction.
I gave him a watch, he wired me money.
Exactly, like you're getting that trust immediately from the transaction, where every one of these deals a winner at the beginning.
To be honest with you, I think so. Yeah.
So with these guys, every deal you did together,
both directions,
felt transparent and good. Okay.
Good.
Okay, so good deals.
Yep.
First deal is a good experience. Locality, the ability to meet in person.
Yep.
Why do you say that locality matters? Like we're in an age of the internet, I've been a big believer that a handshake goes very far.
It does,
Super far in this game because I've done business with guys that I've known for 15 years and I haven't met them. And they've always done good business, but I have other guys I've done business with 3 years. And because they literally came here to shake my hand and I met them, I have a stronger trust 100%. Component and less of a friction thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. So it's twofold. I think it is important. The locale was important to make it happen in terms of ease of just meeting up and then quickly building that relationship.
Okay.
Right. I think that was helpful. By no means do you have to have that, but I think it was huge in terms of helping it happen that way. Others, to contrast it, there's been guys in WTA who I've known virtually for a while. I mean, we could transact for 2 years and talk to each other, and we finally meet in person, and it's like it just steps up the relationship instantly, just from that 1 hour.
But it doesn't have the locality of being able to repeat that.
No, you can't go have a lunch with them or a coffee.
Over and over. Like you can't build a friendship basically.
No.
So I mean,
and there's a shelf life to that FaceTime.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, of course.
Right. So I think helpful at the beginning to be local like that, and then in terms of choosing it, I think if there's other people local that come around or other people that we say, oh, it would be great to, pull these guys in. I think there is probably a size that's appropriate. I don't think you want to get too big. I don't know what that size is. So I think there is a limit. But in terms of who you let in, I think it's all about, it's not let in, but who you want to work with. It's all about authentic value add. It's not, what are you going to do for us? What are we going to do for, it's not that. It's,
Explain that, because I think it's
Yeah.
important to break that down for people. I don't want it to be ambiguous or kind of
Okay.
like vague.
I'll try my best.
Yeah, how do you
It's
create that
thinking
that
out loud
real
here.
value?
I think you have to truly want to help each other. I don't think you can come in going, all right, what can I get from these guys and learn, and then I'm bailing. Like, it's truly I'm going to step in. How can I help these guys? And I know that's going to be reciprocal, right? And it truly is, but it's authentic. It's not, all right, well, I'll help them with their watches, and
In
buy a
hopes of
couple.
getting this and
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But what
quid pro
value?
quo,
So this
it's
is a
not-
good example. You have a group of 4 now that are four core people that you kind of hang out with. What value could someone bring to that table as an example, like of saying, hey, this group needs maybe a graphic designer? What is it specifically that you would say, hey, this would be valuable to all of us? And of course,
We haven't done that yet. We'd love to kind of pool resources in that sense. We haven't quite got to that level. I think it's more looking at the different types of people. So we are all different ages. We have somewhat different backgrounds. I think we're all good at different things. None of us, there's very few skills that we're similar.
interlap, like guys really good in sales, guys really good in marketing, guys really
Exactly,
good.
right? So you have certain different types of watches too. You got some guys doing specializing. Eric does a lot of Breitlings, Omegas, Hublot, whatever it is, and then you have Chris doing some higher end stuff, and Lucas and I somewhere in the middle. Lucas is stepping it up, obviously.
And I assume you
that
can
helps
tap
too.
into each other's inventory too,
100%.
right? Because
We
you're
always
like,
know what each other have.
right? So you're like, hey, I could get an Omega right now.
Guess who I go to first?
Right, yeah, of
It's
course.
nothing against anyone else. You could have a watch sitting there, and I'm going to.
But why not? Yeah, why not?
I'm going
If
to call Eric. Eric, you got. Okay, it's just easy.
Yeah, of course.
easy.
And it's also the guarantee that you're going to get the right information. Like if Eric says this watch is great, and
I
it
know
doesn't
what he
have a
means.
scratch, like you're not like, okay, let me look at it first, and then you're like, ship it to the client. Here's the label, and and then he'll pay me, and I'll pay you after. Like so, you have that trust where you're like, I trust in the product as much as I trust in the money.
And you know what
and-
they mean too. When you work with someone that long, when they say something, you know what it means, for good
Yeah,
or for
of
bad. You're
course,
like, I love you, but I'm going
Right.
to shut down.
Do you think it helps that all of you grew up in WTA?
I haven't thought of that. I mean,
Every one of you.
from the beginning.
Yeah. Meaning none of you were in the watch business before WTA. So
No.
all of you are basically byproducts of
Yeah,
the WTA
came straight
trend.
out of it.
The reason I ask this is because I've argued that when someone grows up in WTA and finds their gang outside of WTA, they're basically receiving counter information and a counter belief system to how to do business. And they come into this learning how to do good business and clean business, and we're not jewelers and we're doing this, and then they leave this into the jewelry shark, business, and with the mindset of a WTA member, and I feel like they get crushed
So
because
that's hard to reconcile.
right. I mean, this is it's like being in the clean business of doing loans and then suddenly doing subprimes in the hood, and you're like
Yeah, yeah,
anybody,
I can't do
and you're
this.
like, how am I? This guy's gonna get crushed on this $1,200 payment. You're like, his family's gonna, but you're like,
Yeah.
that's what buys the
what we
car,
do. Yeah.
So it's a very different dynamic, in my opinion. But do you feel like that had any bearing on what you guys, basically the way
Yeah.
your friendship came together? Or no?
Yeah, so I don't think we consciously thought of that, but I mean, obviously we came together because of WTA as well. But I think it keeps all of our kind of the direction we're going consistent. There's no confusion in terms of macro approach. Like that's just done. This is what we're doing. This is how we're proceeding. It's not, dude, what's with your approach? That makes no sense. Like there's none of that. So we're already all going in the same direction, and it's really refining and reminding and trying different things. But it's not like, hey, why are you going that way, bro? Like that makes no sense. So that makes it easier.
So, having 100K success and now 250, most of you are now trending there in that same gang, which is, again, fantastic.
amazing.
It's great to win together, right? It's
It
even
is.
better.
No, it is.
It
We
feels way
celebrate
better,
together.
right? Yeah,
We
you
all
hang
went
out together,
and
exactly.
celebrated. Yep, it's amazing.
Good friendships, the ability for expansion, catching each other when you make mistakes, things like that.
Yep. Calling each other out when we're not doing what we should, like from a
Yeah,
optimizing and doing
super
your best.
important.
Yeah.
When you look at your success from 100 to 250, what is the biggest change in the way outside of inventory that in terms of mindset or capacity for making sure you keep rising instead of now getting stagnant and saying, well, 250K is a lot of money. You know, I mean, that's a good salary in America, right? This is higher than the poverty level rate. You know, I know that sounds funny, but making less than 150K, depending on where you live, is pretty bad these days.
Yeah, especially down here, right?
I mean, down here, you're basically a peasant. Under 500K, you're not going.
Can't make anything. Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
You can't buy a house.
Guy shows up in a Lamborghini. They're like, "Sir, please park in the back."
That's a poor Lamborghini.
Yeah, the pride is like dead. Like you just have a
That's
good day.
rough, man.
So yeah, no, but I mean, some places we know in Manhattan, you know, like $20 million apartment basically looks like a $2,000 rental here. You know, I mean, again, this is
all
where you live makes a difference, right? So sometimes when people showcase on the internet, they got a like huge mansion in Idaho. I'm like, dude, like, yeah,
Could be
okay.
an apartment here.
Like, does that matter? Like, do we care?
So different, I know.
So it doesn't make a difference. So tell me a little bit about how has your mindset and your business acumen changed from 100 to 250? Especially since it happened so fast.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So, like you said, I don't want to just equate it to inventory, but that is a big portion. You have to be, and I don't even mean size, I mean allocation, right? Like, you move into more 30, 40, 50K pieces, right? You need to. You need to be making.
Why do you feel it's important to move up into more expensive pieces? The argument has always
obviously
been.
people have done it different ways. For me,
Yeah, but why has that been a big part of your?
I don't want to churn 50 watches a month, 60 watches a month. So I'll be honest, part of it is I don't want that volume. I would rather do less watches with bigger margins.
So some people argue, this is actually a maybe good discussion point. We look at a Camden who does 4K watches, he sells for 7K. Like good margin, I mean, almost double the money.
I was going to say, he has the margin in that to something.
I would argue sometimes you take a 20K watch, you're barely making 3K. So I have my own reasoning why I believe that we should all go up as fast as possible. But what has been your thought process about why you decided to go up rather than figure out that lower margin where you can carry more inventory, have more diversity, and win more? I'm just curious as to your personal viewpoint on that.
Two things that come to my mind, and they're obvious. I think most people would have heard this. But number one, I do feel like you're definitely not getting higher percentage margins, but you're getting higher dollar margins. Yeah, you could argue maybe only by so much, but that, you can go sell 5, 6, 7, 8 APs in a month at 20, 30, 40, 50K and be pulling, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7K each watch. That is very different than trying to turn 30 Omegas, right? The other one is the type of client and interaction you have selling that 35K AP versus the 4K, Omega.
Tell me about that.
Very
Like,
different transaction.
okay, I mean, people may not know that. I mean,
No, I mean, and
I live in that world, but they don't know. Yeah.
And then you go above that, and it's another dynamic. But I'd say 8 or 9 out of 10 of those transactions are going to be guys who are already extremely successful, used to sending wires, have plenty of money. They're not going to go broke if you don't send them a watch. So they trust you quickly because they know what to ask. They've already probably vetted you when they called you. And when you say, okay, we've agreed upon a price, they wire you, you ship it, they're happy. The expectations are very different. They're not looking at every single little scratch on their watch like a guy that looked at 40 Omegas would do. So the follow-up and a lot of those details goes away. And then the part I like, which is less, it's not tangible in the sense of equating it to money, growth of the business, but the conversations with those guys are one of my favorite parts.
Okay.
And I tell them flat out.
Talk more about that because
Yeah.
I think it's important.
One of my favorite parts is I'll talk to a guy who's buying a 20K plus piece, and I'm like, well, tell me about yourself. Like, whether it's on the phone or sitting here, and I'm like, what's your business? What do you do? I'd say 4 to 5 of them they own their own business. Maybe one of them's an executive or something. Right. And their stories are fascinating. They're like, oh, I made my money in, whatever, hair salons. I made my money in, shipping. And you're like, tell me more. And these guys will just open up and tell you all about their business. And I love that. But, it's just
like networking,
interesting.
learning about new things and people.
It's not that I'm making money off that, but I'm expanding my world and my knowledge.
And your understanding of how money's made, generally speaking.
Yes. And you learn something every single time. And that person truly appreciates that you're asking them because they love their business.
You said earlier that, more wealthier clients or individuals buying more expensive pieces don't always pick, and that's not always true.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure it's not.
I have a couple of clients I've fired for that because I'm like, you can fuck off.
I'd say more than not. But yeah, I've had the AP guy who's called me and and it's like, okay.
Link 8 seems to have a hairline on the 12. I'm like,
that's the wrong retail buyer.
I'm sorry, is that the one you're going to wear, the one you're going to look at in a case? You know, and it's like, well, I'm gonna wear it. I'm like, are you wearing it now? Yes. Okay, it'll be worse by tomorrow. Let it go.
Yes. Yeah, we got to deal with it. It's part of it.
Have a good
Glad
day.
to hear you deal with some of that
Have a good
too.
day.
Yeah, don't call me back. Don't call me back.
But it happens, you know, it's there at all levels. I mean,
does.
but you're right, it happens a lot less. And like if a box is damaged, they're not like, oh my God, the outer box is a slight scratch. Yeah, it's a 6-year-old watch. I'm sorry if someone put the box under another box and somehow the
like that
boxes
when we
look
got it.
pristine, you know, even from the AP.
picture
Sometimes,
was- oh, yeah.
From the AD, the outer box is like, oh, it's got a little scuff, or it had a
Right.
sticker, they pulled it off and it's got a little
get it
scratch
brand
on
new
it.
that way.
Yeah, so they don't understand that. So it's just what you said. It's the lack of having purchased things before and an understanding of how these things work.
Yep.
So their view is like, well, I was at the store. This is what I got, and now I'm
the
getting
store.
this, and I don't understand that why it's 60% off, but I can't get the same product. That's like, okay,
Yeah, where's my champagne?
have a good day.
This is different. Yeah.
So how? I know you're doing the car thing, but not really like it's not really your thing.
Just enjoying them.
But here's the interesting part though. Your gang is really doing the car thing more than you,
Yeah, I'd say.
right? Like, because Chris did it a couple
Yeah,
of
Chris
times. I mean,
definitely
he took a hit, so then he changed his viewpoint,
Chris
but he
is
did
way
do
more
it,
into
right?
cars
Like
in that sense.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so is Lucas.
Lucas is getting
Lucas is
into it.
starting to get like big into
Yeah,
it.
he just trumped my car with
Yeah.
his Lambo.
Eric's not.
No, we're getting.
Okay, we're getting him
But
to
that's the
switch?
thing. We're like, Eric's the youngest. I mean, I wish I was Eric when I was 30. Like, he's younger, right? It's just different.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. And we remind him of that. He reminds us of things. Again, different life situations and times. He'll be driving a Ferrari at some point.
Has
I'm sure.
the car thing changed the perception you get when selling watches?
Yeah, I mean, I use it when necessary to help build confidence. If someone
How do
really
you do
is-
that? Because people think that just posting your car on Instagram does that.
No,
what are
yes,
some of
it's
the
not
things?
so much that. I'm probably a bit more. I'm not that person. Not against anyone that does that. I'm more one of two things. If I'm showing up to buy your watches, again, safe situation on all that.
Right.
I'll bring the car to show like I'm taking your watches to get them authenticated, checked out, etc. I'll wire you in 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
If they see a McLaren, they're like, okay, this guy's not running off with my 20K watch. So that's one. The other one is absolute worst case. If someone's just like needs to get over the line with something in terms of a deal remotely, I'll FaceTime them with my car. I'll literally, be in my garage and be like,
It
"Dude,
gives you more like
wire me. I'm not going to screw you.
Right, I
Like, what do
understand.
you? Little things like that.
I'm just curious, so that's a really good point. It creates that credibility that you're not going to run away with $5,000 because of, when you're
Why
sitting
would
in
I?
a $200,000 car. So let's talk a little bit about, you've taken all the trainings, you participate in Elite Wealth Coaching, you participate in the masterminds, like you're kind of like, as I said, your gang actually is using WTA, and it's continued resources, not just like it's, oh yeah, I took the training, I get it, I'm
Every
good.
week.
Yeah, so constantly participating. That's been one of the core things I've noticed in all of you, is that you all participate. You're in the core group, in the buy-sell trade group, and you don't just separate like I'm only here to sell. You're kind of still like, I'm learning, I'm still meeting people, I'm still networking,
Yep.
growing, and
Learn something
everything.
every week. I mean,
Right, and
every
I
week.
think that's part of the reason you got successful to begin with. And I think people forget that sometimes they get complacent and lazy, and that becomes secondary.
And we need to check ourselves on that too, and remind ourselves. And we'll do that within our group. Like, dude, get on the mastermind. Do that. It's
Right,
worth
right.
it.
Like participate.
Just
this
sometimes
and
you
that.
get lazy, like you said, lazy. You get busy. Yeah.
What has been the most fundamental piece of the training? I ask this to everybody, like what is the one piece of the training that no matter how far you go up the ladder, still remains kind of your go-to motto in any of the trainings? Doesn't matter if it's part
I don't know
one,
if
two,
there's
three.
one. There's a.
Just give me one or two that have
Yeah.
really been a key takeaway that's still to this day still.
I think one clear one is understand risk mitigation, right? Like, so when you're getting into bigger pieces, as you're growing and getting into bigger pieces, and realizing whether it's from calling you, calling another member of WTA, or just knowing from the market comps, I'm not buying a $50,000 watch. I'm spending 50, and I know if I had to fire sale it, I could call 10 guys right now and they'd give me 45 for it. That's massive. It allows you to make those steps every time without feeling like you're going to lose 50 grand. Right. So I think, and that applies at 5 grand, 2 grand, 100 grand, whatever. Right. I think that's important in terms of confidence to keep moving up.
The wealth transfer mentality basically becomes more ingrained and more real, like as you understand it and understand the liquidity factor.
Yeah, exactly. It's you know what your exposure is. That is very comforting.
And you said you were going to say another one. I didn't mean to stop
Yeah.
you.
So I'm trying to think other ones. From the very, very beginning, I think we talked about this last time, was, in terms of getting started, is just jump in and do it, right? Like start moving pieces. That was important at the beginning when I started. But then it was interesting last time, I think it was last year at the conference, you said something that reminded me, or actually probably taught me for the first time, that same concept is important to go from 50K to 100K watches. Like get off your ass, do it. If you lose a few grand on the first one, that's fine. Buy right, don't be an idiot. But do it and start moving in that space. And I was like, all right, he's calling me out. Like I feel that. So I think that goes from your first watch at $1,200 through to whatever.
Yeah. I recently called that Mike. I don't know if you saw it on one of the masterminds when he was like,
oh, was it the RM? Or?
Yeah, I was like, do it. Stop fussing out.
But that was perfect. And actually, that was example of both things we just said. It was go do it. Here's the price. Call me. I will buy it at this.
And buy the difference. Like, can you afford to lose 10 grand? Can you afford to lose 5 grand?
Not
like
150.
And what's funny is, he actually messaged me several times after talking about it. And he many times he looked for an off ramp. He's like, what about this other model that's cheaper? What about the, like trying to scale himself back to like, I'm okay with these 60, 70K range. What about stainless instead of, and I'm like, no.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, and then he's like, well, it's really hard to get I didn't say it's easy. I didn't say you should do it and like immediately.
I talked to him on Monday about this.
It's not like I said you should just do it and the first thing you have is you're going to pull it and become rich, Obviously, if it was easy, you're learning this trade. So you're not here to rush into it. You're here to accept that you're going to do it. Now you have to get the process behind you. And then you just have to do it. Like, as you said, like now you have to do it. Now that the data matches what you do it. There's no more reasoning why you shouldn't do it anymore. So
yeah, that's good. That's gold right there.
How has your family life improved? I know you're a father. Yeah, I know that you're very big on family time, and this is your number one priority. This is your thing. Like some people love that.
Family.
Yeah, exactly. So what is it that has changed? How has your family taken in the effect that you're making so much more money now with a hobby ultimately? That it wasn't your first profession choice or.
It still isn't.
Right. So what I'm saying is like, how has that improved or changed your dynamic in your family? Or how does your wife, how do your kids kind of
the kids know it now. I mean, they know what dad does on the side. And they know their
they understand your moving watches.
Yeah, they know their colleges are getting paid for by that. They know fun stuff.
And it's a good feeling, right?
It's a good feeling
to not have to work more to get that done.
100%. I mean, they're still kids; they don't get it yet, but they'll get it later, and they do realize it now a little bit. My wife loves that. I think she sees it. She's more supportive now. The further it goes.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because at the beginning, I remember in your interview, she wasn't that supportive at the beginning. Yeah, I don't think she was against it, meaning like she just kind of was like, whatever, you got another hobby, whatever.
Don't do anything dumb.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about, my thing was always like, the people ask me, how do you get your significant other to buy into this? And I tell them, the results make them buy in, not the idea. You go to someone, you go, I'm going to buy a Ferrari. Okay, what kind of bullshit you're on? Tomorrow. But you sell a Ferrari, you make 100 grand. They go, wait, what happened? And then you do it 2 times. They go, okay, well now this is a business.
You didn't get lucky.
You're not just buying cars and having fun with them. So, tell me a little bit about that evolution in your family. At what point or stage was that real?
I think so. At first, and this goes back to the very beginning. At first, like you said, neutral. Didn't believe it so much, but whatever, go try it. Once it was real and I was showing her at the very beginning, right? Hey, 10K a month, whatever. That started to become real for her. But what's been more interesting is my wife has been building her business, her own medical practice, the last few years as well. And she has seen what I've been doing. And 2 really interesting points from her perspective is, holy crap, you're building something while I'm building something, so it's very real to her in the sense of, I know how hard this is and look what you're doing, wow. Instead of just sitting back and being like, oh, that's cool, whatever you're doing. And then the other one, which is great from what it means to my family, is it gives her a sense of comfort to know that while she's building her business, we've got this over here on the watch side to take care of any bumps along the road on her business, right? So I think she can appreciate that at a whole nother level. Not just, oh, cool, 5 or 10 grand this month extra. More like, oh, okay, my business can be more risky. I can go do X to grow my business because I know we're good, because I can call you and be like, hey, can we get some help here? Can you help me work this out financially? That's amazing, right?
It's a good feeling, right?
It's a great feeling.
That's a good feeling.
There's no stress of is my wife's business going to do okay this month? It's we're good.
And lastly, instead of giving advice to the entire WTA community, what advice do you have for 100K club members to get to 250? What was the pivotal change for you, or what can you tell that person that's just hit 100K, and what's coming for them if they continue to do well?
I guess it depends, right? It depends what levers you have to pull in terms of capital, effort. We've all got effort, hopefully, to be able to use. If you have capital, push money in, for sure. If you don't, and you can't afford the time, I think if you can, I still think there's a level of grind from like that 100K to 250 where you're not, you're not coasting down a wave yet, right? So there's still a huge grind.
Yeah, it's still.
Yeah. So if you can stay up to, middle of the night, putting that effort in, I think that's another lever to pull for sure. So don't give up, like don't let off the gas, right? Because that just won't do it. I don't think you get to 250 letting off the gas. And then the bigger pieces, right? You have to, again, you don't have to. In my experience, the way to do it without killing yourself was to push into some bigger pieces. And it took me a while to get clients to do that, but keep persisting on the retail clients for the bigger pieces. And I'm still focusing heavily on retail in that respect. And I think that has helped because the last few years of clients that have built up are coming back, and then all of a sudden you get those lucky months, which is really people coming and buying.
I mean, it's I say this is the compounding effect of success, right?
Yes.
Now, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you have a couple of strong years, right, and suddenly an event like COVID happens, suddenly your money goes 5x, and someone goes, well, that's luck. Well, yeah, it is. In a way, you can predict what that was going to occur, but you didn't let off the gas until you were there at the door when it occurred, right? You weren't the eighth guy at the line saying, I wasn't sure if a year ago I should have done anything, and now I'm thinking about it, and now I'm gonna lose the opportunity while I'm learning, while someone else is like, yeah, I've been preparing for this for 10 years, I always say if you do something long enough, at some point, obviously the environment's gonna favor you if you're good at it, right? Like, meaning more people will need toilet paper that week, and you're like, I've been manufacturing toilet paper for 20 years, and here's the best one. And I have a way to scale 10 times the inventory when everybody else back, and I never thought I'd use it because I never thought the population would increase that level, but it does, right? And it continues to grow as you go. So I think that's an important thing.
It is.
Well, first off, again, congratulations, $250,000, 250K club, 12-month rolling. And again, I ask this at the end of each and every interview, who will be next? Who will be an next 100K club member, 250K club member, 500K club member, $1 million club member? When we started WTA, we were lucky to get 1 or 2 people reaching these thresholds a year. We're now at a place where 8 to 10 people a month are getting to these numbers, and that is a pretty powerful concept going forward. So I want to thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Hopefully I'll see you in a couple of months when you're hitting 500K.
You told me to slow down.
Then you tell me your wife working for you and you all moved on.
There you go.
But until then, guys, again, remember, stick to it, and eventually you end up right here having these types of conversation right here with me. So remember from what we've learned in Christian's interview, again, you have this idea that the gang can be in WTA and your evolution can remain in WTA. That is one of the strongest pieces of advice we've gotten from this interview, and I hope more of you will take it. I'll catch you guys next time.
At Watch Trading Academy, we strive to empower individuals to achieve their financial goals through the lucrative world of watch trading. Watch Trading Academy is the leading platform for teaching you how to buy, sell, trade, and invest in luxury watches.